Welcome and welcome back to Really Legal. I'm attorney Ethan Bearman. Well, it appears that Donald Trump is desperate to avoid the hush money trial in New York, and today was a wild day in New York courts. I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and what's next. And everything that happened today, April 8th, 2024, in New York courts is related to the hush money trial. This is the criminal prosecution by DA Alvin Bragg in New York against Donald J. Trump, 34 counts, felony counts, for the $130,000 hush money alleged payoff of, well, it's not even alleged, it's payoff of Stormy Daniels in 2016, just before that presidential election. And the allegations, as we've talked about in prior videos here, has to do with the fact of how they moved the money around under New York law is considered fraud. So this is a very serious case. Donald Trump has already tried delaying the trial from March 25th, successfully from March 25th to April 15th. He doesn't want this to come to trial before his election. That seems to be their strategy in every court case, be it in federal court in DC, federal court in Florida. What happened with New York Attorney General Letitia James, which is a whole separate topic. But right here, Donald Trump, through his attorneys this morning, filed under seal an appeal to overturn the limited gag order that Judge Merchan issued last week that we talked about here. He also separately filed an appeal for a change of venue, meaning I don't want the trial to be in Manhattan. I want it to be elsewhere. I'm going to talk about that. And also, he asked for the appeals court to stay the trial while these two appeals are happening. Well, let's get right to that one first. New York Appeals Court had an emergency hearing and immediately rejected Trump's attempt to delay the trial again from April 15th to something way further out, as a defendant would want. They denied it outright. Nope, not going to happen. So let's talk about the gag order for a second, because that hearing is tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday, April the 9th in New York, in an appeals court in New York, overturning the gag order. So this gag order, remember, balanced the First Amendment rights of the defendant, here Donald J. Trump, against the needs of the court to prevent jury tampering, witness intimidation and tampering, threats on the court personnel and their families, to allow the orderly process of justice to occur in the courtroom. And Judge Merchan was very well thought out and reasoned in his limited gag order that balanced these out and determined that justice was more important in this situation than Trump's First Amendment rights. So that hearing is going to be tomorrow in a New York appeals court, tomorrow, April 9th. So by the time you're watching this, it could be today. So now let's talk about the change of venue, because this one got heard this afternoon in New York appeals court, and it's fascinating. So I just want to start by saying change of venue has its place. It has a legitimate purpose. And where it's legitimate, I'll give an example of one of the situations where it's legitimate to have a change of venue in a criminal trial. Let's say that there was a complicated criminal event in a small town in a county with a small population that involved a lot of members of the community. And the odds are, if that trial happens in that county, that many of the people in the jury pool are going to have a connection with either the defendants, the victims, or somebody else. And it's going to be very, very hard to find an untainted jury pool, because also, if a high-level crime occurred in a small community, everybody knows all of the details about it and probably has personal connections to it. So it's not uncommon in those situations for the defense to say, hey, look, we have to have a change of venue. We can't get a good jury pool here to select our jury from. And often judges will say, you're absolutely right. We're going to change the venue to 2 counties over, so there's a fair chance at getting an unbiased jury pool, an untainted jury pool who doesn't have, personal connections. So there's a real place for change of venue. I think Trump's team is going to lose badly here because what their argument is, again, I'm not able to see the filings that they did in the gag order or the change of venue appeal, gag order appeal and change of venue appeal in New York because those are under seal. However, there was oral arguments this afternoon, Monday, April the 8th in New York. And so we have a little bit of reporting that came out about it. And what's interesting is he's going to lose because it's my belief, because he's arguing that Manhattan leans Democratic. And he can't get a fair trial because Manhattan's Democratic. And worse, the defense, according to the reporting out of the oral arguments, commissioned a study of people in Manhattan. I don't know the methodology. I don't know how many people. We don't know any of that detail. But according to the defense, 61% of Manhattanites already believe Donald Trump is guilty. Well, that's ridiculous. And that because of the massive media coverage, every juror already knows all that they need to know about this trial, right? This is a garbage argument on 2 points. And I really believe this. One, if you do a survey of attorneys who litigate and do jury selection, go through voir dire and ask the jury, questions to select our jury. I'm going to tell you that just because you believe Trump is guilty or not guilty going into it, as long as that juror says, I believe that I can hear the facts and the law in this case and make an objective decision based upon what I hear in court, and there are follow-up questions asked either by the judge or the attorneys. It depends if I'm in federal court or which state I'm practicing in. We all have different rules on this. And each judge may have their own rules on this, even within the jurisdictions. But if the questions are followed up to find out if they're genuine in that statement that they can objectively analyze as a juror, I want them on the jury. I don't just want people who think he's guilty on my jury. I legitimately do not. And most attorneys I know would say the same thing, who actually litigate. There are different ways of determining who I think is going to be a good juror for my side or not. And it's typically not whether or not you've already made a decision of guilty or not guilty. That's not usually a good measurement. Although judges will say, look, if you say you can't objectively judge, you can't be on the jury. I mean, that one's obvious. But if you say you can, I probably want you on the jury. But more so, Donald Trump wants to move this to a Republican voting area, Staten Island, as I understand it from what I've seen about this case. And can you imagine that being the new standard? If a Democratic politician happens to be in a Republican voting county, he or she is going to say, I can't get a fair trial here? That's a ridiculous. That is just nonsensical argument. Furthermore, this idea that everybody has already seen all the media about this hush money trial is ridiculous. And actually, one of the prosecutors, Stephen Wu, he works for DA Alvin Bragg, said this is the defendant coming into this argument with unclean hands because the publicity is in large part his own. Spot on argument from attorney Wu. I mean, that is exactly. You can't say, there's actually, by the way, unclean hands is a doctrine in the law. You can't cause something to happen and then go, oops, I look, this can't happen now because of, look how bad this is. But if it's of your own doing, Donald J. Trump, calling all of the media attention to it through your own actions, you're essentially a stop from making that argument on the unclean hands doctrine. And I really think the change of venue is going to lose. One last thing that came out late today for Monday, April the 15th, jury selection, which begins in this hush money trial, is apparently a copy of the 42 question survey that jurors will fill out was released. So there's basic biographical questions, that's normal, and then several that will attempt to extract the political leanings of each candidate. And I saw this list over on Politico. Judge Merchan, issued the order regarding the jury questions. And again, that they haven't already self-identified as unable to be fair and impartial, right? You can't be on the jury if you say, I can't be fair and impartial, clearly. But check out this question that I loved. And it's like, whoa, this trial is going to be amazing. And I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. I'm not a good prognosticator when it comes to that. In this case, because New York is not my primary jurisdiction. I'm not licensed to practice in New York yet. So I can't judge how a Manhattan jury will turn out. If you ask me about LA, I'll give you a much better idea, or somewhere else in California. But here's a question from this jury questionnaire. Have you ever considered yourself a supporter of or belong to any of the following? The QAnon movement, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, Three Percenters, Boogaloo Boys, and Antifa. This is going to be wild. I can't wait to see what's going to happen on Monday. But while you were busy, again, watching the eclipse today, this all went down in New York courts. It's a wild day. So what's the good? The good is the appeals court did not delay the start of the trial on Monday. Didn't happen. So that's good. The bad is we still don't know how the appeals court is going to rule regarding overturning the gag order. I don't see that one as quite as important as the change of venue will set this trial back a long time. It seems very unlikely if they grant the appeal on the change of venue, this trial isn't happening until after the election. If they deny it, we're still starting on April 15th. So what's next? We have to wait for these rulings in both cases. And then really this trial begins, jury selection begins Monday, April 15th. Give me your comments below. What do you think of this Trump maneuver? I think it's desperate today in appeals court. It's legal. It's not like the voting cases where the attorneys got in trouble. This is all correct, but I think he's going to lose. I want to know what you think. Comment down below. Hey, click that like button. It's really important here. And smash the subscribe button. Subscribe to Really American. Keep an eye on the Really Legal playlist. I really appreciate it. Please be sure to share with your family, your friends, and your frenemies. I'm attorney Ethan Bearman. This is Really Legal on the Really American Network. I'll talk to you next time.